Hey sports fans, are you ready for an exhilarating gaming experience? Introducing VIPclub.lv, your ultimate online sportsbook and casino. VIPclub.lv offers a vast selection of sports, from football and basketball to tennis and baseball. Bet on your favorite teams and enjoy the thrill of the game. But that's not all. Our state-of-the-art online casino offers a dazzling array of games, including slots, blackjack, roulette, and live dealer tables. Win big with their fantastic promotions, rewards, and exclusive offers. Join VIPclub.lv today and get a generous 200% match welcome bonus to start your winning streak.
And make sure to use code ECSI at sign-up.
Bet it, win it, and cash it at VIPclub.lv. Visit VIPclub.lv now and play responsibly. VIPclub.lv, your sportsbook and casino extravaganza. Must be 21 or older to play. Please gamble responsibly. Visit gambleware.org for help.
Good evening, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is the Travelers Championship with Brady Kannon, our weekly trip to Vegas with PGA expert, Mr. Brady Kannon, as we're going to recap a little of the U.S. Open, as we had some drama here on Thursday, thanks to our expert here, Mr. Kannon, and some Sunday sweats, as we like to say, and that's all you can ask for when you're traveling in these lanes. Shout out to our new sponsor, VIPclub.lv. Always remember, at checkout, use the promo code ECSI and tell them JD sent you, and they'll take care of you. Shout out to the guys behind the desk, Mr. Joseph Shea, Mr. Ben Cohen, Cade Horton and Ben doing all our work behind here. It's been a long day. Apologies. But let's get to our guest, our weekly guest, good friend and colleague, the one and only Mr. Brady Kannon.
Mr. Dawson, good Wednesday evening to you, my friend, post-U.S. Open. And, you know, like has been the case for many, many years now after the U.S. Open, it's always the Travelers Championship. And this year, a little bit different. We had a great field last year. I've had a pretty good field the last couple of years. And of course, this year we have an outstanding field, as once again, we have an elevated event. So most of the best players in the world are here in Cromwell, Connecticut, going from the left coast to the east coast in just a week's time. So a lot of traveling for these guys, especially the guys that played in Toronto the week before the U.S. Open for the Canadian Open. A lot of back and forth here, but that doesn't stop us golf bettors excited for what ought to be another good week on the PGA Tour.
Well, first, hats off. Last Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, you gave out Ricky Fowler, first round leader, and watching the opening round, Team Puma in full effect. An amazing round from him as we celebrated a 55 to 1 ticket. In comes Xander to say not so fast, but still an amazing pick on your part.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I was quite excited to see it come to fruition. And, you know, if you're going to give me a first round leader ticket cashing, I'll take it being split by just one. That's not too bad at all. You hate to see it when, 4, 5, or 6 guys tie for the lead. But hey, that's better than a loss. And I'll certainly take it split with just one guy. And of course, we had the outright on Ricky to win it all as well. So not only was I excited to get a little cash with the first round leader, but I was looking forward to, the week to come with Ricky getting off to a great start. And, I was out of town for the week and kind of watching the U.S. Open in bits and pieces when I had a moment. And I had told my friend going into Sunday, I certainly don't want him to have the lead on Sunday because the pressure that comes, or the lead on Saturday, I should say, because the pressure that comes with that, having to sleep on that lead going into the final round. So that wish came true. He was tied for the lead. I liked that. I would rather have that than being out in front with a guy I'm on. But I just had this sneaky feeling that he wasn't going to get it done. It was such a fairy tale ending and such a storybook, that kind of all of us golf bettors wanted to see written, because there was a lot of people on Ricky. And I think America was really cheering for him. He's been, a golf fan's hero for a long time. And I was never the biggest Ricky Fowler fan in the world, many years ago. But as of late, as he's had this resurgence of his career and he's really putting his game where, we always expected it to be, I've become a fan in the last few months, watching him do what he's doing. And I hope it continues. He's playing wonderful golf, and I think that's great for the game.
There was a lot of complaints, whether it's about the gallery, especially like on Thursday. The way I understood it was most of the tickets that were offered went to the hospitality tents. There was only 9,000 or so actual tickets that could be available for people walking the grounds. It looked bare. To Brooks Koepka, Fitzpatrick complaining they didn't like the course right away. Two guys coming out shooting -8. The leaders after Friday, if I remember correctly, were -10, and yet the winner on Sunday, again, I think if I remember correct, was a -10. Not the U.S. Open that we think of with the thick, high rough that if you miss it in the fairway, you hope to be able to get a bogey and move on. Your thoughts overall of the LA Country Club and hosting the U.S. Open?
Well, I've heard the disappointment with the crowds and, the very corporate atmosphere around, and that's not a lot of fun. And especially when you have a major championship where you want the roars and the raucous crowds, and the boos and the jeers and the roars at Augusta National that are so famous. I think you want all of that, certainly at a major championship. And we really didn't have that until the very end, when you saw some fans kind of rush the court, if you will. So I think that was lacking. And, we do our pizza money play of the week on our Heat Strokes podcast. And, the prop bet was out there that the winning score would be, if you wanted over, I think it was 271.5. And if you thought it was going to be over that, then that meant, better than 9 under par. And I was like, these guys aren't, I thought the winning score would be maybe 6, maybe 7, somewhere between like 5. And I even said maybe as many as 8, but I couldn't believe that number was saying, if you want the over, it's going to get to 9. And sure enough, we were at 12 at one point. It looked like we were going to get the winner at 12. And part of my handicap of that was, first of all, I felt the course was going to be more difficult than that. And for a lot of people, it was. But second of all, I felt the USGA, they don't want to see a double-digit winner. And we did see the course get drier and crispier and firmer and tougher, as the weekend wore on. But I tell you what, Jeff, if Ricky Fowler would have won, there probably wouldn't be any critique. Everybody would be thrilled had he won. But now that he didn't, we kind of go dissect a little bit and make our little points where, it could have been better. And I tend to agree with you. I think the crowd and the course, it wasn't perfect, but I wouldn't mind coming here again. And maybe if they can, correct those mistakes, because, I thought the mystique of the golf course and how exclusive it was really interesting to get to see it for the first time and try and handicap it and watch these players try to get around it. And like I say, a lot of guys really, really struggled around this place. So it was definitely difficult, but yeah, I mean, you'd love to see him do it all over again with the great fans and, maybe the winner come out at about 6 under par.
Going into Sunday, and we talked a little about this backstage, to set the stage, there was the number one golfer in the world, Scottie Scheffler, that's been battling the putter now, from tee to green. He's just been doing historical things. You had Xander, Ricky, who are chasing their first major. You had Rory, who hasn't won a major in 9 years. Yet at the end, it was Wyndham Clark. Go figure. I was listening to someone say, in golf, you got all these big names, and it's always the one, as I said, hiding in the weeds. Take us up to Sunday and then how Sunday ended up finishing.
Well, and that's what I say about Ricky. I had the feeling that, the storyline, the movie script that we were all wanting, in Hollywood, of course, apropos being there in Southern California, the Hollywood ending rarely happens. And I just felt it was not going to somehow for Ricky. But, he proved me wrong for a long time. And then, of course, he had a very disappointing 5 over par round on Sunday. But I was really hoping that it would come to fruition to see him do it. And then, of course, Rory was right there. You mentioned Scotty. I had a ticket on Scotty Scheffler as well. I mean, all the guy does is finish top 5. Why not take a shot with him every week? He's just absolutely incredible. And we've talked about it before. Putting is typically not a skill set that is going to be good or bad for extended periods of time. It's going to correct itself more so really than any other skill set of your typical golfers. So that putter's going to get hot for 3 or 4 days here pretty soon. And he's going to just lap the field. Who knows when? But like you say, Wyndham Clark was just he looked more like Scotty Scheffler does on a regular basis, where he never makes that big mistake. And he just never really came back to the pack. He had a blip here and there. On Saturday, he gave one back, but he finished Saturday with that birdie when Ricky finishes with a bogey. That's the other thing. There's another little complaint we can make. Why did they finish so late on Saturday? I couldn't believe, and these guys, Wyndham Clark and Fowler, said it was dark. We had trouble seeing at that point. So that was a real error as well, I thought. And then, of course, they went off earlier on Sunday. They figured that one out right away. But Wyndham Clark, he just did not have many chinks in the armor. And that's what you have to do to win any week on the PGA Tour, especially a major championship. And I know a couple of very sharp people in the business that had a flyer on him in the neighborhood of 85 to 100 to 1. So I didn't know, this guy obviously won the Wells Fargo Championship back in early May. But I didn't expect him to this quickly turn around and win a major championship. I know he has the talent, and he comes up in all your looks at the stats and all that other stuff. But I just didn't think he was ready to grab a major trophy like that so quickly. And hats off to the guy. I think he's one of the good guys on tour, and well deserved.
Before we dive into this week's Travelers, as you said, in Cromwell, Connecticut here, every week I say, man, that number, and I got to bring it up. Justin Thomas, 5,000 plus 5,000 going into the U.S. Open. I 81 on Friday. Can you explain? I said to him, Justin, take your bag, go take a few weeks off, do something. I can just imagine what's going through this guy right now. What is the problem? Do you know?
I don't. I really don't. And, you and I talked on this show a few weeks back. It was the Memorial. And I think he got to like 35 to 1. And we haven't seen that price on him in a long, long time. And here was a tournament where he's had great success and this golf course as well. And, everything was just right for him. And I said, okay, the numbers gotten really inflated. Here's a good situation for him. Let's take a shot. And he disappointed completely on that week as well. And then we see him go to 50 at the U.S. Open. It's just crazy. And, I know one of our friends, Chris Felica, the Bear from College Game Day on ESPN. He's now switched over to Fox, and he's got the college football season coming up there. He was on my podcast earlier today and gave out one of his plays for this week was Justin Thomas to miss the cut here at the Travelers at plus 150. So the fading of Justin Thomas has not ended yet, my friend.
Well, we're here, and you like to say, and you see me smile, elevated event.
Yes.
It's a week after the major. I always get a little, that letdown before a major and the week after. I'm expecting big things this weekend from this tournament, and I'm going to turn it over to you to break it down.
Yeah, you make a good point, Jeff. I think the handicap after a major is always a little bit tricky because, and we've gone through this after the Masters and after the PGA. What is the mental fatigue level of some of these guys that were contending on Sunday? What's it like for Wyndham Clark, having won not only his first PGA Tour event in his career a couple months ago, but now having won his first ever major championship, and all the media commitments and the press conferences and the TV shows, and now traveling across the country. And I'm sure the celebrating that he's done with his friends and family. And it's really hard to gauge how these guys are going to rebound the very next week. Then you have, maybe the guys that were not necessarily in contention but had a good week. Do they ride that momentum into the following week? How about the guys that made the cut but didn't really do anything at all? Are they just in bad form? And then the guys that made the cut, are they going to benefit from a couple of extra days off? And maybe they had been playing just fine. Look at Ricky Fowler. Ricky Fowler missed the cut at the PGA Championship by a shot. It didn't really disturb what he was doing on tour. The guy obviously remains in great form. So I think there's some guys that you can look at in this field as well that might have missed the cut at the US Open, but I wouldn't necessarily take that as a sign to immediately fade them. My first play on the board was one of the shorter shots, Xander Schauffele at 15-1. And it was kind of funny going through this handicap. I just felt like, he just finished 10th at the US Open. He had that first round lead. And then after that, he didn't really contend. He really blew it on Saturday. He wasn't that great on Friday. He just really never, lived up to what he had done on that first day. So I don't know if that cauldron of going through that grind of being in contention in a major really ever was a part of Xander Schauffele's week. And then I recalled, I said, oh my gosh, he's the defending champion. And I typically don't bet on the defending champion, but I still feel he's obviously a good fit for the golf course. And I do feel, coming off of the way he finished at the US Open, it's probably a positive, where he wasn't bad at all. He finished top 10, but he's probably a little bit upset and disappointed with himself that he didn't do better. And I think that's a motivating factor. And then you just look at the stats over the last 36 rounds. He's sixth in this field for birdies or better gained. He's sixth in this field for strokes gained on approach. And he's first in this field in hole proximity from 150 to 175 yards, which is a number where a lot of the approach shots are going to come from. And this is a little bit redundant because the guy did it to the tune of 19 under par at this course last year. But I think Xander will be right in the mix again. And I also kind of like him. He seems to win, obviously, at non-majors. He hasn't won a major yet, but he wins in those events that maybe are a little bit under the radar, it seems. Now, I know he's won some biggies as well, but this one, just to see the Travelers, seems to be very much up his alley. So I thought, as far as some of the shorter shots, he was the one I wanted to take a crack with. The next one I landed on was Russell Henley at 35-1, and I almost felt sick to my stomach taking that number. I know he was as high as 50, and I know some people that got him even better than that. And I was a little bit late to the party on this guy, obviously. And another funny thing here, I just kind of looked at the names and I said, gosh, he, like Xander, he really seems like a good fit here. And then, before I even started crunching the numbers or looking at the odds, and then I look at the odds and I'm looking all over at, other people in the betting space, and everybody loves Henley. And that's why the number's been crashing. I'm like, oh, geez. So anyway, I'm on Russell Henley with everybody else in the world. But he does make a ton of sense. I mean, sometimes you just have to follow your process and look at the numbers. And Russell Henley is number one on tour in driving accuracy. Over the last 36 rounds, he's 17th in this field for strokes gained approach. And I think those are a couple of very strong areas at this particular golf course. He's got very good finishes at this course. He's done very well at the correlated courses that I used this week. And then you go back to what he did at the US Open. He finished 14th. And I think that's another example of a guy that was not quite in the mix, where, he's not walking away incredibly disappointed because he probably really never had a shot, but he played very well, and he's got to be very pleased with how he's playing. If you go back to the last 8 results, he's missed 1 cut. The other 7, he has never finished worse than 19th. So the guy is playing very good golf right now. If you can get a better number than 35, then certainly more power to you. You'd love to see him at 50, which is probably where he really should be, considering the elevated field. But let's not forget, this guy's a top 30 player in the world as well. Then I went down a little bit deeper to Siwoo Kim at 46-1. And I thought that was a pretty decent number. Maybe Henley should be more in that neighborhood. These guys are ranked very similarly and both playing exceptional golf right now. Siwoo Kim has kind of been flying under the radar a little bit. He finished second at the Memorial, and he was second at the Byron Nelson and fourth at the Memorial just, in the last month. And the guy is able to get it done as far as strokes gained off the tee. He makes a lot of birdies. He's very good on approach. I mentioned the proximity. I basically was measuring from 125 to 175 this week, and Siwoo is spot on with his irons from that distance. So, the way he's going in current form, as far as the numbers and the results, he was a guy I didn't mind landing on at all. And here we go back to the U.S. Open. Siwoo finished 39th. So he's kind of in that category that he made the cut. He was never in it, but again, he's not playing poorly. And so I don't think he's worn out mentally, and he goes on, and I wouldn't be surprised if he contends once again, like he's been doing for the last month or better. And then finally, my longest bomb on the outright market was Corey Connors. And I thought this number was pretty big, 72-1 on Corey Connors. I was surprised to see that. I mean, this guy was just a force not that long ago at the PGA Championship. He contended at the Canadian Open. Now he missed the cut at the U.S. Open. And I think he gets a little bit of a pass there because the week prior, he was really in the thick of it at his country's National Open. He was there celebrating with Nick Taylor on the 18th green. That was a big emotional moment for him. I imagine it was a physical and mental drain. We've seen Canadians crumble in that event for decades. And so the wear and tear it has to take on them. And for him to miss the cut at the very next week, which happens to be at a major championship, is not necessarily surprising in hindsight. And this is kind of the example that I use. Let's not immediately fade a guy just because he missed a cut. Corey Connors has been playing really good golf. So the 72-1 was a surprise to me. I mean, he won the Valero Texas Open not that long ago. He finished 8th at the Wells Fargo. The guy's a ball striking machine. He gets it done off the tee, from tee to green, on approach. If he can get the short game going, he ought to be in contention this week as well.
Well, you made me smile in one of my 2 one-and-dones, the Rick Gaiman one-and-done. I used Siwoo Kim this week. So
there you
great
go.
minds think
Good.
alike. So good job there. I appreciate that one. First round leaders. It's going to be tough to match Ricky of last week, but what'd you come up with this week?
Yeah, I've hit 2 this year. I believe just 2. It was at the Honda Classic, Joseph Bramlett, and I think I had to split that one as well. And then, of course, Ricky. And, that's not too bad. I'm not a full-time first-round leader player. It's the lowest amount of risk I do with any market in golf betting. And, I mean, it's absolutely lunch money. I think it's less than pizza money. And that's probably the way you should treat it, because it is that hard to hit. The fact that I've gotten 2 is pretty good. And I've come close on some other occasions, but sometimes you're just so far off the map. And usually with the outrights, I'm not that far off. A lot of the guys and this is why I do this. When I bet the outrights, I also bet them for a top 20 finish. And even if they don't win at all, a lot of those guys cash those top 20 tickets. But first round leader, it's just so random. It's really hard. So you want to be careful with this one. And we can only hope for some luck here once again this week. And I went back to Corey Connors for a first round leader as well at 60-1. I've talked about the skill sets. I've talked about the mental makeup and what he's going through off of the Canadian Open, missing the cut. I think the couple extra days off will benefit him to kind of, exhale after what he's been through for a couple weeks and just find that form that he's been in for a while here this summer. So I don't think there's anything that says Corey Connors can't jump right back into the mix this week. And let's hope it happens on Thursday. I talk about him finding a hot putter. Hey, just one day, Corey, just on Thursday. That's all we ask right now. Whether that carries over into the weekend, that would be great. But just for one day would be super. Also, if you look at what Corey Connors has done since the beginning of the year, since January, he has had 3 first rounds where he has gained 5 or more strokes on the field. So he has proven that he can get out to a hot start. The second player I went with was Emiliano Grillo, who, of course, just won a few weeks ago at the Charles Schwab Challenge. And he's very similar to Corey Connors. Great ball striker, great iron player, great off the tee. But the short game, you just wonder about it sometimes if he's going to be able to find it. And, again, we just need it for one day. We'll see if he can get it done. If you look at the last 36 rounds, he ranks 23rd in this field for strokes gained approach, 35th for birdies or better gained, and 11th in hole proximity from 150 to 175 yards. So as I say, the guy has all the numbers for the stats I'm looking at this week. Now, if you go back to the Masters, Grillo has had 3 opening rounds in which he gained 3 or more strokes on the field. So he's been getting it done early in opening rounds as well on occasion. Let's hope he adds one more to that list here on Thursday in Connecticut. And then finally, I went with Taylor Moore. By the way, Grillo at 150 to 1 to be your first round leader. I mentioned Connors at 66, Grillo at 150, and then Taylor Moore also at 150 to 1. All 3 guys I played here, Corey Connors, Grillo, and Taylor Moore, have all won on the PGA Tour this season. So they've got that championship medal in their veins coming in. And Moore has been off the boil just a little bit. He's missed the cut the last couple of weeks, but he won the Valspar Championship at Innisbrook. And that was one of the courses I used this week as a correlated course. And if you look at what he did that week, he was 3rd in the field for strokes gained off the tee, 5th in strokes gained approach, and 10th in strokes gained putting. So those are 3 areas that we absolutely want to see fire this week here at the Travelers. And, Taylor Moore, this guy's a top 50 player in the world that not a lot of people have heard of. So I thought 150 to 1 was pretty elevated for a guy that has shown he can compete with the very best, even at an elevated event like the Wells Fargo. He opened that tournament with a 66, which was just 1 shot off of the first round lead.
Well, it just takes 18 holes, and you're getting a hell of a price at 60 to 1 and 150 to 1. So definitely some meat on those bones. We'll be watching definitely early and often on those. Lastly, your head-to-heads this week.
Yeah, I landed on just 2 head-to-head matchups. Taylor Moore again. Taylor Moore at -140 over Sam Bennett, and Corey Connors again at -110 over Denny McCarthy. I've seen that number get a little higher on Connors. I'm probably okay with it up to about -125. Taylor Moore, I'm probably okay with it up to about -150. Sam Bennett, I believe this is just his 4th professional start. He did play in the Masters as an amateur and had a great run. Everybody remembers that great story from back in April. But now he's playing for keeps, and he's done pretty well on occasion, but he's also fell flat on his face a couple of times. And, I think it takes a little time before a guy's going to have a lot of success on the PGA Tour. And I'm not ready to back him yet, and I'll choose to still go against him for the time being.
Next week, where do we travel to, sir?
Next week, we are going to Detroit, the Detroit Golf Club for the Rocket Mortgage Classic. This is another Donald Ross design. Of course, we saw Donald Ross, his name was in the headlines for Oak Hill, the PGA Championship. He designed East Lake and Sedgefield, one of the classic designers of all time. And we've got some courses we can use, not only on tour on a regular basis, but some courses that have been used in recent history where we can fall back on for correlations and stuff like that. But, this tournament, I believe it's only about 4, maybe 5 years that they've been playing it. The Detroit Golf Club is a new venue to the PGA Tour, and it's a little bit of a birdie fest. But hey, we can bet on those too.
Closing, I'm trying to think here. You would, we were talking about Jeff Sherman, and I'm always jabbing him how good he is on his, over unders. And you were talking earlier in the show about, his over under of 9.5 last weekend. What is the over under for this week's tournament?
I didn't even look, Jeff. I'm sorry. If you give me a minute, I can check. No, my mobile's not next to me here, but I can tell you this. it's probably in the neighborhood of 15 under par, because if you go back the last 10 years, the average winning score here at the Travelers was 15 under par. However, 2 out of the last 3 years, that winning score has been 19 under. It was 19 under last year for Xander Schauffele. Harris English the year before was lower than that. I want to say he got into that famous 8-hole playoff with Kramer Hickok. I want to say that winning score was in the neighborhood of 14 or so. And then the year before, I can't remember who the winner was, but it was also at 19. So I would imagine Jeff's number is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 or 16 to win this tournament. And I would want to go lower than that. I think the winner will get to 16, 17. I think maybe even 20 under par, Jeff. You've talked about this before. Obviously, it's an elevated event, so you've got better players than is typical around here at TPC River Highlands in the field. And then you also have the weather forecast, where for about the next 10 days, as far as you can tell, they are forecasting rain and thunder showers. Now, it doesn't, it's basically kind of like a 50, 60% chance. Maybe it's at night, maybe it's in the morning. So it doesn't look like it's going to interrupt the golf too aggressively. So hopefully we get a clean tournament without too many, delays or interruptions or what have you. But the fact remains, I think we'll have a soft and gettable golf course. Combine that with an elevated field, and I think these guys should be able to go low. This is Rocket Mortgage should be a birdie fest. I'd say this is a semi-birdie fest, and it could break out, and who knows, maybe we get to 22. But I wouldn't be surprised by another 19 or so here this week in Connecticut.
And lastly, we're 1 month away from the British Open, correct?
Yeah, almost exactly. Let's see, it is July 20th, I believe they tee off. And it's escaping. Hoy Lake. They are going to Hoy Lake, where they were last in 2014, if I recall, when Rory won. Tiger won there as well. And I'm almost positive that was before Rory in 2014. So it's been a while since we've been there in England. And this is interesting as well. Rory McIlroy, his last major, he was at Hoy Lake in 2014. He finished first, obviously, and finishing second. That was the year that he finished top 5 in all 4 majors. Finishing second at the British Open at Hoy Lake was Ricky Fowler. And yes, Jeff, I did already bet him. I bet him before the U.S. Open started at 80-1 to win the British. And when I got back from vacation and I looked at my app to see where he was after the U.S. Open, I've seen him down as low as 40. So people have taken notice to what Mr. Fowler is doing as of late.
Well, that's you moving numbers. We know that, Brady. So the scroll has been going the whole time at Las Vegas Golfer, at Golf Bet, at PGA Tour, at Sports Grid later this evening. And of course, Heat Strokes Pod. Go over onto YouTube. Please subscribe over there. It's free, gentlemen and ladies. As always, where can they get all your work, and what time will you be on Sports Grid this evening?
Yeah, Sports Grid this evening, I will be on at 10:15 Eastern Time, 7:15 Pacific, usually on for 1 or 2 segments on Wednesdays to preview the tournament. You can always follow me on Twitter at Las Vegas Golfer and get updates with everything that I'm doing. I wrote an article earlier today for the PGA Tour about the first round leader. Also, our podcast dropped today, the Heat Strokes podcast that you mentioned. You can find that on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. But a friend of mine from VEASAN, Ben Wilson, joined me, a really good handicapper in a lot of different sports, including golf, and a guy that really fits the same description. I mentioned Chris Felica, a guest on the podcast as well, a very good handicapper in a lot of sports, and golf, certainly one of his favorites. Felica's the guy I always lean on in this part of the country, of course, because he spent many years at ESPN, which is right down the street from where they play this at TPC River Highlands.
Well, we can't thank you enough. We got a lot of tickets to be punching in the next few hours. Please, everyone, go follow Brady at Las Vegas Golfer, at Heat Strokes Pod. Go catch him on the Sports Grid. I always enjoy it at 10:15. It's the replay. In my mind, you and Dubsy. Tell Dubsy I said hello. Shout out to Connor as always. Everyone else, go take a few swings this week. We try to get you off the tee nice, keep you in the fairway, and we always try to obviously land in the green. So that's what we did last Thursday. Let's keep it going. So for myself, Jeff Dawson at DC Sports Invest, from our guest and good friend and PGA expert, Brady Kannon at Las Vegas Golfer, we wish everyone a blessed evening. Cash some tickets. We'll see you on the tee tomorrow morning.